Today I'm working on a 2-piece hunting knife set for an anniversary present for a customer, and I already have the first part of it ready for handles, but today I thought I'd take you guys from the beginning on the second part of the set and take you along for the process of finishing them both up. Here's the first part of the set. It's a 4-inch drop point with a little swedge on the top and a Hamon blade finish that I spent around 8 hours hand sanding and polishing. So I'm going to try to do a 3-inch skinning knife to match. This is the design I sketched out. It has around a 3-inch blade and a 4-inch handle. And then I also put this little thumb ramp on right here where your thumb can go for a little bit of extra control when using it. I'm going to be using this piece of 1/8 inch thick W2 high carbon steel for this knife. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer the sketch onto the steel and then cut it out. Here I'm just using my portable bandsaw that I have mounted in a swag off-road table with a foot switch. I like to use bimetal blades, and that works really well for cutting out all my knives as well as all the handle materials. To shape that little area on the underside of the handle where your finger goes, I like to use my 3/4 inch small wheel attachment, and that really works well to get those nice and smooth. When I'm drilling my holes in the tang, I like to start with 2 holes where the pin and lanyard holes are going to go, and then I like to fill in the space in between with some extra holes that provide some weight reduction as well as more place for epoxy to seep into. Here I'm using a chainsaw file to file in a sharpening notch, and I like putting those into my knives because it lets you sharpen the edge all the way to the back. Here's the profile finished up. I really love how handy and small it is, and I think it should work really well. Now I'm just going to go ahead and grind some preheat treat bevels, and I'll show you that next. When I'm doing my bevels, I like to start using a worn out 60 grit ceramic belt, and then once I have the initial grind established, I like to switch over to a fresh 60 grit belt, and that allows me to have a lot more control and to get the grind exactly where I want it to go. Here are the bevels after 60 grit, and then once I'm done with that grit, I like to switch over to a 120 grit belt, and then finally I like using an A100 Trizac belt to get the final finish before heat treating. Now that I have the blade ground, I'm going to go ahead and try to do the Hamon finish to match this blade. So I'm going to take the satanite clay and then apply a layer onto the blade, and then that'll differentially harden the blade and hopefully give us that pattern once I etch it. Now that I have the clay on there, I'm going to let it dry overnight, and then I can start heat treating it. I'm going to be heat treating this knife in my kiln, and I'm first going to bring the oven up to 1475 degrees before holding it there for around 10 minutes and then quenching in Parks 50 oil. Here's the knife out of the quench. Now I'm just going to temper it twice at 400 degrees for 2 hours each. Alright, so the blade is nice and hardened, has a nice golden straw tempering color. And if you remember before when I was filing this sharpening notch, the file would bite in and I could file this notch, but now it's nice and hard and the file just skates across the top. It's time to head back to the grinder and start thinning out the edge to its final thickness, and then polish it up all the way to a 400 grit Trizact belt. As I'm grinding, you can see that I periodically dip the knife into a water bucket below my grinder, and I do that because it helps catch sparks and it also keeps the edge from heating up, because if the edge heats up too much, it could ruin the temper of the knife and then it won't stay sharp. Since the bevels are ground, it's time to start hand sanding. I have all my sandpaper here and I'm going to start at 150 grit and then go all the way up to 2000 grit to get an almost mirror polish. After about an hour or so of sanding, here's the first side up to 2000 grit. So now I'm going to flip it over and get to work on this side. I have the blade degreased, and now I'm going to go ahead and put it into my solution of ferric chloride acid. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and polish it up using this 1500 grit silicone carbide polishing compound that I have mixed into a slurry with some oil. Here I'm etching our name into the blade, and I do that by using an electro etching machine, and I first use an etch setting which gives you a deep mark, and then I'll switch it over to the mark setting, which will then darken the mark and will leave a really nice logo in the blade. Here's the finished blade. I'm really happy with how the Hamon turned out on this one. It's really nice and clean and has great contrast. With both blades done, it's time to start working on the handles. I have a couple really nice pieces of ironwood that I'm going to be using for them, so I'm going to trace out the handle onto them and then start cutting them out. Once the handles are prepped, I like using G-Flex epoxy to put them together, and I like G-Flex because it was originally developed to seal boat hulls, and if it's good enough for sealing a boat, I'm pretty sure it can seal my knife handles. These are going to be clamped up overnight to let the epoxy cure, and then tomorrow I'll go ahead and shape the handles. The glue is cured, and I have both blades taped up to protect the finish from scratching. Now I'm going to start shaping the handles using a fresh 60 grit belt. I always like to use a fresh belt for the ironwood because it's super dense and oily and burns really quickly if you have a dull belt. Before anyone makes a comment making fun of my dirty shirt I'm wearing, Desert ironwood is really oily and it can stain your clothes, so I don't like to ruin my nice clothes when I'm working. These scalloped 1x72 J-Flex belts are one of my favorites for handle shaping because they have the scallops which prevent the edge of the belt from digging in, and they really work well for blending everything together. Here I'm just hand sanding the wood all the way from 320 grit to 2000 grit. Here are the two handles all finished up. I love the really nice polish that they have after 2000 grit sandpaper. So now I'm just going to clean up the spine and all the edges, and then I'm going to go inside and put some mineral oil and beeswax on the handle to give it a final shine and bring out the grain. The last thing I'm going to do is to sharpen the edge, and I like to do that by using a 120 grit belt to set the edge and then polish it up all the way to a 400 grit belt, and then I strop it on a leather strop that's loaded with 1 micron diamond spray. And here are the knives all finished up. I hope you all enjoyed watching these two knives come to life, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you would like to see more. I have some cool projects coming up, so stay tuned and stay sharp. Thanks for watching.